Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Maybe the facility you manage could establish new revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services. Cart King International can be the answer to your needs. Cart King is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile coffee, food, and retail carts and kiosks. Cart King has been working with clients and corporations across North America for 20 years, providing innovative designs, custom manufacturing, and timely delivery. Carts and kiosks are fun, and so are the dozens of designs on our website. Please visit us today at www.cart-king.com or just call us at 1-877-986-7771 and get your sales rolling.
If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law. PureSoapFlakes.com, 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with Pure Soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. They have a little promotion going on. Contact them to order some soap. Mention the Opperman Report. You're going to get a free gift. They're going to send a little extra soap, travel size, soap bars and laundry soap, cleaning soap flakes. I've been using that stuff all day long today. Great stuff. Order today at puresoapflakes.com or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild. The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. Okay, I'm really excited about today's show. We have Michael Gross. His website is mggross.com. He's a columnist for the Daily Beast and other publications, written many, many books on modeling and New York City real estate, and he's written some articles about President Mr. Trump and his modeling agency and his parties back at the Plaza Hotel. Michael Gross, are you there?
Great to be with you, Ed. Let me just correct. The website is mgross.com, just mgross.
What did I say?
MG Gross.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
Okay.
We're having a rough day, me and Michael. Tell us about yourself. Who is Michael Gross?
Well, I was born in Manhattan. I grew up around New York. Studied history in college. Came to New York. Spent 10 years writing about rock and roll. 10 years writing about fashion. And ever since, I've kind of written about what passes for society. I write about wealthy people, powerful people, influential people, and I'm the editor-in-chief of a small but very influential society magazine in New York called Avenue.
Very good. Now, you've written a couple of books about the modeling industry. How did you get involved in modeling?
Well, when I was in the rock and roll world, rock stars had a tendency to date, for lack of a better term, fashion models. And so I was constantly around fashion models and found them alluring, rather like rock stars did. And there came a point when my best friend, who also ran a rock magazine, albeit a different one, and I thought that we wanted to get out of the rock and roll world, and we decided to write a series of mystery novels. And it was right around the time of Studio 54, and we decided that our detective character should be a fashion model. And he was an English major, and I was a history major, so he was in charge of the words, and I was in charge of the research. And I started going out into the fashion world to research this book about a fashion model. And I found it incredibly fascinating. And after we wrote 3 of these books, I started writing about fashion as a young journalist. I married a fashion designer. And rather quickly, I think because of my point of view on fashion, I got a really good job at the local community newspaper here in New York. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a little thing called the New York Times.
Sure.
And working for the New York Times, I suddenly found myself sitting in the front row of fashion shows in Paris, London, Milan, and New York. And that also is what led me from fashion to, for lack of a better term, rich people. The people sitting next to you in the front rows were the wives of private equity tycoons and princesses and countesses and all the people from society, and it was priceless access. I moved on to New York Magazine from the Times, and at New York Magazine, beside writing about fashion, I also started to write about fashionable society, which is the world in which I've been a writer ever since. So I no longer write about fashion, but I'm still rubbing shoulders with that world all the time. And in fact, the last book that I wrote was called Focus, and it was about fashion photographers.
Right, and the other one is Model: The Ugly Business of Beautiful Women. Now, I've tried to find other authors who've written these exposés on the New York modeling business and the New York modeling world, and it's even after they've written a book, it's difficult to book these guests. Like, people don't want to talk about this.
Well, I think that first of all, the fashion world doesn't look kindly on people who tell the truth about it. But second of all, in the Me Too moment, with charges of sexual harassment and all of that swirling in the atmosphere, and fashion photographers being accused of, all kinds of pervy behavior, which is what both of my books are in part about. It's become a fraught subject to talk about, and I think a lot of people are a little bit wary at this point of putting themselves out there, on the off chance that somebody might cut their heads off.
You'll be ostracized in the New York social life.
Well, there's a difference between social life and the fashion world. The fashion world they're both vicious, but differently, and they don't always share the same mores and priorities.
What can you tell us about President Mr. Trump and his history in the modeling business in New York?
Well, I've known him and reported on him for probably more than 30 years. I first met him in the 80s when I was covering parties for the New York Times. And over the years, I've known some of his wives, and I've been in and out of his world. I've interviewed him a number of times. He was a character in at least 2 of my books. But when I was writing Model, and this is in the mid-'90s, I heard about parties that he was throwing. This was between his marriages. Parties that he was throwing in the Plaza Hotel, and I subsequently learned elsewhere, where modeling agents were encouraged to bring young girls, and older men would be invited, either by or including or known to Donald Trump. And they were basically meat markets. Let's say it's M-E-E-T, not M-E-A-T. Although, I subsequently learned that there was the other approach to this as well. And this was basically to put hungry, ambitious young women in a room with wealthy and men who would be interested in vulnerable young women. And there's a lot of that in New York. Am I allowed to use 4-letter words on your show?
Not really, no. We'll play on AM radio, so I'd rather if you didn't.
Okay, so there are men who are model hounds, let's say, particularly in cities like New York and LA. They chase models. Models are trophies. They're trinkets. They're things that you collect, trade, discard. They're not people. They're playthings. And there's a deep and wide culture of this that surrounds the fashion modeling business. It's also in Milan. It's also in Paris. Again, these are things that I'd written about at great length. And what was interesting was when I was writing Model, Donald Trump was such an insignificant character that I left these stories out. So cut to 21 years later, and Donald Trump is running for president, and I was watching the Republican convention where he was anointed as the candidate, and I remembered that I had this file with these interesting stories about Trump. I don't know if it was before or after the infamous Access Hollywood tape came out. I think it was probably afterwards. But I thought that I had something to contribute to the conversation, and I dug out the file. I believe the first thing that I wrote was simply what I had learned 16 years earlier, 17 years earlier, that there were these parties, that girls were traded like party favors, and that it took place in the Trump-owned Plaza Hotel with Donald Trump as if not the procurer, then the ringmaster of this slightly sordid circus. Subsequently, some people came out of the woodwork. There were people that I had not been able to find on the first go-round, and I was able to find them, and I started talking to people who had actually attended those parties. And I learned about drugs and sex and Trump disappearing into rooms. And, my father was also a journalist, and he had a wonderful, colorful expression about rumors of people having sex with other people. And the expression was, if you weren't standing next to the bed holding the towel, you really don't know. So I really don't know what went on in bedrooms, but I found eyewitnesses to Donald Trump being at parties, introducing his friends to young women, and sometimes disappearing into rooms with young women. Not illegal, perhaps immoral in some people's eyes, perhaps sordid in many people's eyes. But when you're running for president, and you're being supported by conservatives and evangelicals and people who are very proud of upholding moral standards, I thought pertinent to the national conversation, and I'm glad that I was able to put all that on the record.
Did you receive any kind of repercussions from that?
No.
Okay.
No, I think I think that Trump is a creature of television. Let's be honest. I mean, he comes out of the tabloid tradition, but once he graduated into being a reality TV figure, television is what matters. So yes, there was a repercussion of sorts. There was a point at which I was not able. I found men who attended those parties. I was not able to find women initially who were at those parties. And so I was not able to quote women who said, Donald Trump came up to me and this is what happened. And that was a missed opportunity for me. But I was writing quick stuff for a website, and again, subsequently, I began to hear from some women who were at those parties after these pieces were published. And I had a little file, and at one point, the BBC did an hour-long expose of Trump and his women, and I was very glad to be able to help them. And most of the women who talked to the BBC were women that I introduced them to. And so we were able to get those women on the air where you have the power of broadcast and the reach of broadcast. For better or for worse, Donald Trump was already president. So, like so much in the Trump presidency, that BBC special came and went.
Yeah, I had two of those women on my show, Heather Braden and Barbara Pilling.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I did.
Barbara and Heather both came to me, and I introduced them to the BBC. And that was, I guess my little contribution to the public discourse and to your show.
Your public service. Very good. Thank you very much. You helped me out, too. Okay, great. Now, they had mentioned to me, especially I think it was Heather, that Trump had a 17-year-old girlfriend from Haiti, a Haitian 17-year-old girlfriend?
I'd have no reason to doubt Heather, but right. I was not aware of that.
Now, I lived in New York City back when Trump owned the Plaza Hotel, and what I had heard was that there was a floor of the Plaza Hotel. You could only get up there with a special key or have like a membership. Is that correct?
That's not what I ever heard, but, I did hear about corner suites, lavish suites that would be taken over for these parties.
And a lot of the girls were Scores girls?
To my knowledge, they were aspiring fashion models. Whether there were also Scores girls there, I don't know. But, it's interesting because Trump developed a relationship with several modeling agencies in New York, probably through these parties, and made a study of the modeling business and subsequently opened his own modeling agency. Since disbanded, but, for many, many years, there was an agency called Trump Models, run by, real model bookers and booking real models who worked, not nobodies, but important models. They opened a division where they took superstars of the 60s, 70s, and 80s and gave their careers new life. And that subsequently split off and became an independent agency apart from Trump called Iconic Models. So there was a real modeling aspect to this. Whether there was also traffic in what I used to call actress model whatevers, which I guess would include Scores girls, that I was unaware of, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Now, Trump Modeling Agency, I recall seeing that they were making money. They were making like $3 million a year.
I don't know.
Okay. Now, you saw the lawsuit against Trump Modeling Agency where the young Haitian girl claimed that she was basically held captive. She was a slave labor, I think the expression was. Are you familiar with that?
Well, not in particular, but in general, the modeling business is very prone to litigation. Models are prone to filing lawsuits against their agencies. Agents sue models, and lawyers get to write very colorful complaint documents that are often tailored to make it into gossip columns. And so, no, none of that surprises me.
Okay, right. I can see that, too, because I've been involved with some cases as well, too, where they're pretty much trying to get a settlement before they sue. because they don't want it to reach the press. So they use a lot of what do you call that? Inflammatory.
Well, it's a very litigious world,
right?
And all but the tiniest number of models have very short shelf lives in their career, and so it's cash in now or you never will is the general rule, and that I think creates a hothouse atmosphere that gets lawyers overheated.
Now, I've seen a lot of articles, too, about Trump's friendship with John Casablancas from Elite Modeling Agency. What can you tell us about that?
Only that they knew each other, that there was some collaboration until Trump became a competitor.
Okay, and John
Casablancas lived in the world of model hounds. He was kind of the apotheosis of the model hound because he was the guy who turned it into a multi-million-dollar business. He was very glamorous. He was well-educated, well-spoken, and slept with some of the top models in the world, probably many of them. So he was an icon. All model hounds looked at John Casablancas and said, "God, I wish I was him." And those with enough power, money, influence, and reach could actually achieve entry into John's orbit. And model agencies are also always looking for investors. Model agencies are always looking for powerful friends. Model agents are always looking for powerful men that they can play matchmaker for. And these are things that have gone on since the business was invented in the 1920s.
And so John Casablancas had this rather extreme reputation, but then Trump sent his daughter, Ivanka, 13 years old, to go work at his agency.
Yeah, charming, huh?
Yeah. Was that naive, or he felt he could trust him, or he didn't care?
Well,
what do you think?
Cindy Crawford said to me once that in the modeling world there are certain models where there is a spoken or unspoken, that girl you don't touch.
Okay.
An Ivanka Trump would have fallen under that category because she had a wealthy, famous father with a reputation for being vicious and litigious. And we've seen all of that played out on a very grand scale. Only a fool would have touched Donald Trump's daughter.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, because Trump was a very powerful guy, even in those circles. Okay, let's take a little commercial break. We're with Michael Gross. His website is mgross.com, and he's written several books about modeling, Model, The Ugly Business of Beautiful Women, and Focus, The Secret, Sexy, Sometimes Sordid World of Fashion Photographers. We'll be right back with more of Michael Gross after these messages. And now a word from our sponsors. If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law.
Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119. PureSoapFlakes.com, 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with Pure Soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. They have a little promotion going on. Contact them to order some soap. Mention the Opperman Report. You're going to get a free gift. They're going to send a little extra soap, travel size, soap bars and laundry soap, cleaning soap flakes. I've been using that stuff all day long today. Great stuff. Order today at puresoapflakes.com or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. We're here with Michael Gross. His website is mgross.com. Written some fascinating books on New York modeling, Focus, The Secret, Sexy, Sometimes Sordid World of Fashion Photographers, and Model, The Ugly Business of Beautiful Women. But he's also written a lot of books about New York City real estate. Now, Michael, what can you tell us about Melania Trump and her modeling career?
Well, you know, there are various levels of models. The models that the general public knows are generally of two types. They're either high fashion models like Christy Turlington and Naomi Campbell, or they're more along the lines of swimsuit/personality models like, Giselle Bundchen. Girls with, and they're all known as girls, it's just the lingo of the trade, that are as familiar to a quarterback at Indiana State as they are to a neurasthenic New York society woman. Then beneath those two very high-earning celebrity category models are a vast, ladder on which lesser fashion models cling. And Melania Trump was one of those. She was a model who appeared on the cover of Maxim and appeared with her clothes off and appeared in vaguely lesbian photo shoots. And she was a woman who made a living as a model, pretty girl, didn't have to speak, just had to look good in a bathing suit. And, then she met Donald Trump and became his girlfriend, and she became something more important than that. Modeling led her to Trump. She was not a big model, a top model, a high fashion model, or a particularly successful model.
Did she ever work for Trump Modeling Agency?
I don't know.
Now, she got a pretty sweetheart deal there with the HB1 visa. What do you know about the modeling business and these models getting these visas?
Well, that was par for the course. It only became an issue because suddenly Trump wanted to stop some people from getting those visas, just not his wife. I mean, but I think if you look up hypocrisy in the dictionary, there's a little stipple portrait of Donald Trump next to it. That only became a story because he expected other people to follow rules that he didn't feel should apply to him.
But I'm curious about the modeling business in general, because I read an article again. It was about the lawsuit against Trump modeling agency, the young Haitian girl, and it talked about how 80% of all of Trump's H-1B visas his applications were because of the modeling agency, that he was importing these girls from all over the world. Is that common in modeling?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I mean, model agencies have scouts who fan out around the world. There are what are called feeder agencies in every country in the world. And basically, as the trends in modeling change, the locales that models come from change as well. There was a moment in the 90s when the first generation of Soviet bloc model women who had grown up eating well, living better, having a better quality of life, emerged, and there were many, many beautiful women there, and it was an untapped market. And so these guys who were known in the business as scouts or scouts in French, because they can't pronounce the word scout, would fan out across Eastern Europe and pick up these women with high cheekbones and good bones and good bodies and ship them back to Paris and Milan and London en route to New York. And there was a whole cadre of lawyers who specialized in getting them work permits and visas, and it was just normal course of business until Trump made immigration an issue and his own hypocrisy came to the fore.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Even his own immigration attorney, the one from the John Lennon notorious immigration law firm, speaks out against Trump on this issue. His own immigration attorney. Speaking of these scouts, or scoots as you call them, Jean-Luc Brunel, what can you tell us about him?
Jean-Luc Brunel.
Jean-Luc Brunel.
Jean-Luc Brunel was a French modeling agent who was exposed as a guy who behaved very badly as far back as 1990-something on 60 Minutes. No one can see that 60 Minutes show because there were some lawsuits or threats of lawsuits about it, and it no longer exists. You cannot get it. It's not in the archives. It's not on YouTube. I've seen it, and it was a particularly chilling example of what later became completely unacceptable in the Me Too age. But Brunel continued after that. I met him when I was writing my book years after the 6th. I remember going to Miami in the early 90s and on tables, most of whom have been much more than excited over by Jean. And Brunel has a reputation as a guy who is happy to introduce rich men models.
Right, and he was also close with Jeffrey Epstein, the Palm Beach billionaire. What can you tell us about Epstein and his friendship with Trump? Was he ever at those Plaza Hotel parties, you know of?
I don't know if he was ever at any particular party, but I have read and been told by fellow journalists that they were all part of the same swirl, and that this was a swirl of rich and powerful men who dabbled in young and vulnerable women. I can't give you any specifics. I wasn't in the room, and I wasn't holding the towel.
Gotcha. But when you say swirl, you would include Donald Trump in that swirl?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, it's a swirl. It's an international phenomenon. Lots of them know each other. They think of it as a cloud. Somebody at one end of the cloud may not know somebody at the other end of the cloud, but they're all doing the same things with the same motivations, and every once in a while their paths might cross. In general, in the modeling world, a lot of these guys know each other because they have similar predilections. and they're both, let's call them friendly competitors. There are lots of guys who like to be in that fashion swirl with a model on their arm, and they look at each other, and they know each other, and they're aware of each other. It's a small group of people with attributes in common. Some know each other, some don't. Again, it's not something that I've ever reported, so I can't say I know.
What about the name Adnan Khashoggi?
Back in the day, before Trump built Trump Tower, when he had first moved across the East River from the outer boroughs to Manhattan, and he was planning Trump Tower, Donald Trump sublet an apartment in one of the very first luxury condominiums in New York, which was called Olympic Tower. And it was built by Aristotle Onassis, and the apartments were sold to Onassis's rich friends and people like them. And Trump actually sublet an apartment from Adnan Khashoggi.
Really?
And after living in that apartment, he tore up the plans for his own apartment on top of Trump Tower, and he completely redid them because he was inspired by Khashoggi's over-the-top opulence. And Donald told me that story himself.
Really? That's fascinating. I never knew about that connection to Khashoggi. Okay.
Well, that story is in my book called House of Outrageous Fortune, which is about the luxury condo phenomenon in New York City.
And what can you tell us about all that? Trump's finances, and there's a lot of accusations now about allegations about money laundering for Russian oligarchs. What do you know there, Michael?
Well, you just brought up about 15 topics in one sentence.
I know.
So, we could go on for hours, or I could just tell you a story, which is that beginning with Trump Tower, Trump took the formula that Onassis had created for Olympic Tower, and he perfected it. This is a for good or ill. The reason why there's now a billionaires row along 57th Street and surrounding it in Manhattan, where there are all of these $70 million apartments, you trace it backwards, and it traces backwards to Donald Trump, who began putting up and marketing buildings to the richest people in the world, and he started doing this in the 1980s. The difference between the buildings that are being built now and the ones that Trump built is that what Trump did was he did very, very opulent buildings. They were always very tall, and they always had great views. The apartments themselves were rather, let's call them cookie cutter, mean, not very attractive. And that's why the Trump buildings are no longer considered to be top-tier buildings. But the phenomenon of rich people from all over the world coming to New York and parking their money in condominiums is a phenomenon that starts with Donald Trump. And it starts with him conceiving of buildings that are designed and sold to the international plutocracy. Trump started doing that at Trump Tower. He did it very, very successfully. The book that I wrote, the building that I wrote the book House of Outrageous Fortune about, which is called 15 Central Park West, which for the last 10 years has been, pretty consistently the most sought after and most expensive residential building in New York. It exists because Donald Trump took over something called the Gulf and Western Building, 1 block south on Columbus Circle in Manhattan, and he turned it into a high-end condo. And that and Time Warner Center, which was right next door, changed the entire complexion of what had been a very downtrodden neighborhood and turned it into a place where very rich people wanted to live. He basically raised the profile and the value of an entire neighborhood by, and give the devil his due, doing a good job at what was going to be called the Trump International Tower until somebody realized what TIT meant. in the English language, and so it was changed to the Trump International Hotel and Tower. And it's still there, and the Trump Organization still manages it, and I believe owns the John George Restaurant, the premises of the John George Restaurant in its base, which is still one of the great restaurants of New York. And, this is something Donald did well. Now, whether it was good for New York is arguable. Whether it was good for the real estate business is not. It was very good for the real estate business. He created a template that others have now improved upon, and they have literally changed the face of New York City in ways that are profound.
How much of that do you think was money laundering, though?
I don't know. I mean, I read the New York Times just like you do. Money laundering is, you're using a very vague term as a brush to paint on Donald Trump. The way that I've described it in my books is that these buildings are piggy banks, where people from overseas put their money to keep it safe. Now, in some cases, that means to hide it. In some cases, it's entirely possible that means to launder ill-gotten gains. In some places, it just means that they're getting it away from a government that might confiscate it one day. Maybe they're moving it into condos to avoid taxes. There are a zillion reasons why you might want to park a small fortune in a building. And it's not just Trump. It's every single high-end condo in New York. They allow people to buy apartments under limited liability companies, under pseudonyms where the actual ownership of the building is hidden. I mean, when I was writing House of Outrageous Fortune about 15 Central Park West, I was determined to discover the owners of every single one of the several hundred apartments in that building. And I figured out, more than 80% of them. There were some where the ownership was so well hidden, I simply couldn't figure it out no matter how hard I tried. There were others when I called the owners up, they said, "That's not me." And I would say to them, then why is the LLC housed at your country house, which is in your name? These people actually think that they can get away with things like this. And that's because they're incredibly powerful and wealthy. And that gives them a certain amount of impunity. That certainly describes Donald Trump as well. To say that all this is about is money laundering is painting it with a very broad brush, and it's not accurate. There are bad people doing bad things in those buildings and in this world, absolutely. But you have to say it's not everybody, it's not everything. Was Trump aware of it? I can't imagine that he was not.
Yeah, because Trump was no stranger to organized crime in New York City.
Well, so they say. He built buildings, and you have to buy concrete from somebody.
Right. Okay. And what about there's a lot of stuff. Tom Arnold is chasing around for these tapes of Trump using racist language. Any knowledge about that?
Nope.
No. Okay. Nope. Let's take a little.
Might it be true? I wouldn't be at all surprised. He's a crass and outspoken guy.
Yeah, and in New York City, the older people in New York City around that time, white guys in Manhattan, that wasn't uncommon at all, especially in the 80s and 90s. That was more common than not, if anything.
Well, casual racism still exists.
Yeah.
Casual sexism still exists. There are people who don't evolve.
Yeah.
And then there are people who do, and Trump seems to be a guy who's pretty set in his ways.
Did you ever imagine he would become president? Even when you were writing your article in 2016?
It's funny. He walked into the building where I live in July of 2016, just after he declared, as I was walking my dog and I was standing in the lobby. And here I am face to face with this guy who's like a joke running for president,
right.
Which is a joke. But he and I, to my eternal shame, we always got along. And so there I am standing there facing him, and I did an instantaneous calculation as to what I could say, and I stuck out my hand and I said, "You're having a lot of fun, aren't you?" And he gave me a big smile, and he said, "Yeah, I am." And then he went off to whatever apartment he was doing his fundraiser in, and I went off to my apartment and told my wife about my encounter with the presidential candidate. And then the phone rang, and one of the concierges at the desk in my building said to me, "Do you know Donald Trump?" And I looked at my wife and I said, "Well, I either just became very famous in this building or very infamous, and I'm not sure which."
Probably a little of both. What would you say? What would you say to those people? You know, you see them out there, you know, and they say, well, Trump's an outsider and he's rich and he just loves the country and he wants to do good for us. What do you say to those people who believe that?
You know, in my job as the editor of Avenue magazine, my constituency includes a lot of Trump supporters. And I early on had to decide how I was going to deal with it. And I deal with it by smiling. If I'm backed into a corner, I will say, you know, I don't agree with you. But there is absolutely no point in engaging with those people. They have drunk the Kool-Aid. They're not going to change their minds. I'm not going to change their minds. There's nothing I can do about it. And getting into a tussle with them is pointless. There's no purpose to be served by it. The one thing that I would say gives me a certain amount of cheer is that a lot of the people who were very proud of voting for Donald Trump 2 years ago are not so proud anymore.
You talk in your articles about cocaine use at these parties at the Plaza Hotel. More recently, there's been these allegations, Trump snorting Adderall. Any inside information on that?
You know, I've heard the same stories that you've heard. I have no idea. What I know is that Donald had a brother who was a degenerate alcoholic who probably died as a result of his alcoholism. And part of Donald's shtick for 30 years has been, I don't go there. I don't do substances. So, you know, on that, I don't see any reason not to take him at face value.
But then he had that helicopter pilot who was involved in a pretty serious drug smuggling.
You know, I have friends who've broken the law. Is that my fault or my responsibility? I don't want to be put in the position of defending Donald Trump here. But I also think that, you know, guilt by distance association is ridiculous. You know, there's enough that we can talk about Donald Trump that's real. Why do we need to go into the same kind of conspiracy theory garbage that Trump supporters believe? I don't see that as constructive in any way.
Okay, very good. And then what else can you share with us that I haven't asked you?
I'll be writing more books. I hope people buy them.
Michael Gross.
No, I think you've covered the waterfront, Ed.
Oh, you think we've covered everything. Okay, great. Okay, Michael Gross, the website is mgross.com. He's the editor of Avenue magazine. Michael Gross, what do you want to leave us with?
Thank you for having me, and I hope that all of your listeners also read and that they pay attention to what's going on in the world, and that if they feel so inclined, they try to do something about it. At the very least, that they get out and vote in every single election.
Michael Gross, thank you so much. Okay, I really do appreciate this.
My pleasure to be with you.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, then we have Michael Gross, mgross.com, not MG Gross, mgross.
mgross.com.
mgross.com. Thank you so much. Editor of Avenue magazine, author of many, many books. The ones we were talking about today were Focus, The Secret, Sexy, Sometimes Sordid World of Fashion Photographers. Another one is Model. Where is that one there? Pull it up real fast. Model. The Ugly Business of Beautiful Women. But thank you so much, Michael Gross, mgross.com, Avenue magazine, the editor. Check out his books over here. I think we got some pretty good stuff out of Michael. Focus the secret, sexy, sometimes sordid world of fashion photography and model the ugly business of beautiful women, from Michael Gross. If you by the way, too, don't forget emailrevealer.com. That's where you can go and get an autographed copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. Got all kinds of stuff for you there. Asset searches, locates, adoption investigations, online infidelity investigations, try and track people down and catch them cheating online. You trace their email address back to online dating websites, porn sites, escort service sites. Wish we could add into a little bit more of that with Michael Gross, but I think he really went beyond what he was planning to do. So thank you so much, Michael Gross, mgross.com. And now a word from our sponsors. OppermanReport.com. Hey, do you like what you're hearing? Do you like the work that you see us doing here at Opperman Report? You can support that work by becoming a member at OppermanReport.com. And as you have access to over 200 exclusive shows and interviews that you can't find on YouTube or Spreaker or iHeart or iTunes or KYAH. You can't find them anywhere else online, exclusive to our member sections, to our members. Also, too, there's images, videos, documents, court docs. And don't forget, you can hear your ad played here on the Opperman Report, reach hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people on a daily basis because the show is repeated every day all over the world. Contact me at oppermanreport@gmail.com and I'll give you a good deal on advertising rates.
Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Maybe the facility you manage could establish new revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services. Cart King International can be the answer to your needs. Cart King is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile coffee, food, and retail carts and kiosks. Cart King has been working with clients and corporations across North America for 20 years, providing innovative designs, custom manufacturing, and timely delivery. Carts and kiosks are fun, and so are the dozens of designs on our website. Please visit us today at www.cart-king.com or just call us at 1-877-986-7771 and get your sales rolling.
The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119.
Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents, they handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be. because the team at KMDlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to KMDlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law. PureSoapFlakes.com, 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with Pure Soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. They have a little promotion going on. Contact them to order some soap. Mention the Opperman Report. You're going to get a free gift. They're going to send a little extra soap, travel size, soap bars and laundry soap, cleaning soap flakes. I've been using that stuff all day long today. Great stuff. Order today at puresoapflakes.com or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild.